Welcome back to another video. In this video we will have a look at Azure Active Directory. Now Azure Active Directory is Microsoft's multi-tenant cloud-based identity and access management and directory service which enables users to sign in and access resources. And these resources can be things like Office 365 or could be one of the many SaaS applications out there as we have here. It could be even access to the Azure portal itself over here, or even organization-specific apps like the corporate internet. And it can be used or consumed by mobile devices, and the mobile devices can be secured by Microsoft Intune, which integrates with Active Directory. And another example is cloud HR apps, which integrate with Active Directory when HR creates user accounts. These can be automated and then populated into Azure Active Directory. And with the on-premise Active Directory server, you may have an existing on-premise AD server, which is looking after thousands of users and groups. Well, rather than recreating them from scratch in the Azure environment, these can be synced across into Azure Active Directory. So we can use what we already have rather than recreating them from scratch. And integration with the on-premise and legacy applications within the organization, or cloud hosted applications over here, ones that have been developed by your company. So we've got all these different types of services that I can think of, and there's probably more, that can integrate with the Microsoft Azure Active Directory service. And in a nutshell, it's for users so they can log in, they can be authenticated and authorized to access the services with the correct level of permissions. And just have a look over Azure Active Directory versus the on-premise Active Directory. What are the differences between these two? So there are of course some differences between Azure AD and your on-premise AD. On-premise AD is used to manage traditional on-premise infrastructure and applications, where Azure AD is good for managing user access to cloud applications. And Microsoft differentiates them using three different concepts, which are by users, by applications and by devices. And I've got some examples here. So for provisioning users on the left hand side here, on the on-premise AD, on-premise users can be created manually or automated via external systems such as Microsoft Identity Manager, which is a HR system. And with Azure Active Directory, you can of course create users manually, but integrates with external systems as well, such as HR applications like Workday and SuccessFactors. And you can also use Azure AD Connect Agent to sync on-premise identities to the cloud, and it can provision identities in something known as SCIM-enabled software as a service applications to automatically provide applications with the detail to allow user access. So there's a lot more support for automation and integration with the Azure Active Directory service. And the next one down, for provisioning external identities, such as if you are integrating with customers and partners. And with the on-premise Active Directory, external users can be created manually, but results in administration overhead to manage the lifecycle of external identities. However, for Azure Cloud, it provides a special class of identity to support external identities. You can use Azure Active Directory B2B collaboration, which is a feature within external identities that lets you invite guest users to collaborate with your company. And then we've got admin management here, and for the on-premise AD server, a combination of domains, organizational units and groups are used in AD to delegate administrative rights. But with the Azure Cloud, it's very different as it uses built-in roles and custom roles in a role-based access control system to control access to the identity system, the apps and the resources, and privileged identity management can be used for further control of access control. Moving on to SaaS applications down here, with the on-premise AD, it requires integration with ADFS, and with Azure AD SaaS apps that support OAuth 2, SAML or WS authentication can be integrated to use Azure Active Directory for authentication. And then the last one here is mobile devices. Now for on-premise Active Directory, there's no support without third-party solutions. And with Microsoft Azure AD, you can use Microsoft Intune, which is integrated with the Azure Active Directory service. And Microsoft Intune, by the way, is Microsoft's mobile device management solution. And here's the full article where I've got this from. So to compare Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. So you can see the end-to-end features in this table here. So there's quite a few of them. so it's worth a read. And you can see here it differentiates it by apps, well, users to begin with, which are over here. So users, and then apps, and then devices down here. Let's minimize this and go back to the PowerPoint. Now on this page it shows the comparison between Azure Active Directory and Active Directory Domain Services. And here is how Azure AD is different from Azure AD Domain Services. First, Azure AD is different from deploying an Active Directory domain controller on a virtual machine and then adding it onto your on-premise domain. Azure AD works differently and is a managed service, so here are some key differences. The first one is Azure AD is for cloud, and for Active Directory Domain Services it's for your on-premise environment. And Azure AD is designed for HTTP and HTTPS. And because it's based on HTTP and HTTPS, it uses REST API over HTTP and HTTPS for querying, whereas queries via Active Directory Domain Services is via LDAP. And for communication protocols, with Azure AD being HTTP and HTTPS based, it doesn't use Kerberos, it uses HTTP and HTTPS protocols such as SAML, WS Federation or OpenID Connect for authentication, and it uses OAuth for authorization. And Azure AD is built to use federation services and lots of third-party services like Facebook, whereas Active Directory Domain Services does not use federation services. And users and groups in Azure AD are created in a flat structure. There are no organizational units or group policies like there are in Active Directory Domain Services. And to briefly go over the Azure Active Directory features, it's a cloud-based directory and identity management service. And it provides employees and business partners single sign-on to access many of the cloud SaaS applications like Office 365 and Salesforce. It helps application developers focus on building applications by making applications integrate with the identity management capabilities. And it has other identity management capabilities as well, such as multi-factor authentication support, device registration, self-service password management, self-service group management, privileged account management, role-based access control, application usage monitoring, and auditing and security monitoring and alerting. So these are some of the features you can use with Azure Active Directory. I've taken this table from the Microsoft website to compare Azure Active Directory editions. And with Azure AD there are 4 editions. So there's the Azure AD Free edition over here. And it moves on to, you can get the Microsoft 365 apps, and then there's the Premium P1, and finally the most feature-rich version is the Premium P2 here. And you can get the free one with an Azure subscription, or you can even get it with Dynamic 365, Intune or Power Platform, and it provides user and group management, on-premise directory sync, ability to do some level of reporting, single sign-on across Azure, Microsoft 365 and other SaaS applications. But you can see the features down here it supports and the features it does not support. With Microsoft 365 application here, this edition comes with Office 365 and builds on the feature set of the free one, offering identity and access management for Microsoft Office 365 apps. And this includes things like offering multi-factor authentication, group access management, and self-service password reset for cloud users. And Premium P1, of course, offers even more features down here. So it has additional features such as including allowing hybrid user access to on-prem and cloud resources, dynamic groups, self-service group management, Microsoft Identity Manager, which is an on-premises identity and access management suite, and cloud write-back capabilities, which allows self-service password reset for your on-premises users. And down here we can see it's got the risk-based conditional access feature as well. And then we've got the Premium P2, which is the be-all end-all. It's got everything. So it's the most feature-rich and includes the free and P1 features and has a risk management, conditional access, identity protection, access reviews, entitlement management and privileged identity management, which helps discover, restrict and monitor administrators and their access to resources. And it has a feature known as just-in-time access as well. And the premium editions are available through Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. or the Open Volume License Program, or the Cloud Solution Provider Program. So they're the ways you can get the premium editions. And Azure and Office 365 subscribers can also purchase the P1 and P2 online as well. And here are the different editions, and you can see the pricing for them as well. So for the premium P2, you can see it's £6.80 per user per month, which does not include VAT. And you can find the pricing on this webpage here. Azure Active Directory plans and pricing here. So if we scroll down, you can see them all here, and you can see the different features as well available with each of them. Now there's a dedicated portal for Azure Active Directory and all of the services you can manage from one place, and this is known as the Azure Active Directory Admin Center. And in here we can see all of the services and the Active Directory links on the left hand side. And if we go into all services, which is here, it's better to show on a live portal, so let me bring up a live portal of the Admin Center. If we go into all services on the left hand side here, and we can clearly see there's so many services in relation to Azure Active Directory. So they've put it all in one place for us so we can manage it all from one location. But we can see things like we can manage users and groups from here. We can go into the Azure Active Directory portal. We can check the Azure AD Connect Health. We can manage enterprise applications. We've got Azure AD Identity Protection here, and it has categorized them as 19 identity apps, and these are 14 of the security apps. We've got Azure AD Connect here to sync existing users to your on-premise Active Directory servers with Azure AD rather than having to recreate all the users and groups again. And if we go back to the dashboard, obviously you can create your own dashboards from here. I've not got much details in mind as it's a fairly new Active Directory environment. But you'd usually see details of users and groups and user sign-ins, some Azure AD quick tasks. You've got audit logs down here and things like that. And I will be doing a demo of the Azure Active Directory portal as well, as soon as I've gone through a few more bits on the PowerPoint slides. So let's minimize this for a couple of minutes and we will get back to it very shortly. So that's the admin center, and it's probably better having a look at it from here. You can see what it looks like, and that's the link to it. And as roles plays a massive part in Azure Active Directory, it's worthwhile covering the concept of. As with everything nowadays, it's all based on role-based access control. And you can use roles to give administrators the exact privileges they should have, as roles are made up of various different permissions. For example, this administrator here, known as the password admin, is only able to reset passwords for users and other limited administrators. So that's the role, and it's a very specific role with role-based access control. So we've got lots of roles like this, and with the roles you can do various different things depending on the permissions set for that role. And you can also create custom roles as well, but you need a particular license for that. I think it's the P1 license or above. And we can see other examples of built-in roles here. But again, it's better to have a look at the roles within the portal itself. So let me bring up the portal again. And this is my Active Directory portal. So if we go to Microsoft Azure from here, I can go to Active Directory from here. I can type it in the search. I can search for it from here as well. So Active Directory, and then on the left hand side we've got roles and administrators over here. So we can have a look at the complete roles available to us, and we can see them here. And I can scroll down, and these are all the built-in roles, but you can also create your own custom roles as well. And for any of these roles, if we click one, we can see the assignments, who it's assigned to, which users or groups, things like that. In this example, there's no assignments, but you can add it from here. And you can see a description as well of the role. So you can see the description in terms of the permissions. So summary and then the permissions as well. The permissions that are assigned to this role. So for example, this role is allowed to create all types of applications and also delete all types of applications. And there's many permissions for this role, which is the application administrator role. You can see them all down here. We can also go to users. So if we go back to my org over here, go back to Active Directory. And here's some basic information on my tenant. So my name, name should I say, is my org, tenant ID and all that sort of stuff. And the license, I'm using an Azure AD free license, and I can see with this Active Directory tenant, I've got 5 users, 4 groups and 2 applications set up already. And down here, I can see my name and I'm the global administrator. And I can view my role information by clicking on role information here. Now, when you sign up for an Azure subscription, you're signed with the global administrator role. So this is by default. And this is the highest role. So it's recommended the fewest people as possible are assigned the global admin role. And the global admin role, as well as another role known as the privileged access role, have the rights to delegate roles to other administrators. So just those 2 roles. And because I signed up for this subscription, we can see I am the global admin. And in the portal, we can see this from the Azure Active Directory page, which is the page I was just on previously. Let's go into Global Administrator. My user account is assigned as a Global Administrator, and we can again click on Description as well. And we can see in summary what the Global Admin is and the role permissions for it here. So these are the roles we can assign to users within Azure AD, roles and administrators, to give them the rights, permissions, privileges to carry out certain tasks, and this is all part of role-based access control. If we go back to home, we can have a look at users as well. Let's go to Azure Active Directory again. And we can see on the left hand side, we can view users and we can create users from here. Because as with many platforms that enforce authentication, a user account is required with Azure AD as well, so users can access their resources. A user account is either an account created in Azure Active Directory, so we can see user accounts created locally here, which are these ones, or it can be user accounts that have come from the on-premise Active Directory domain services via the syncing process, in which case those objects will contain all the information required to authenticate and authorize the user, and this syncing process is via the agent called AD Connect. Azure AD Connect is used for syncing user accounts, group memberships and credential hashes from the on-premises AD domain services environment to Azure AD. And if we go into one of these users, let's go into Jack Brown. We can see all the properties and information about Jack. And on the right here, we can see the group member information, the applications, the assigned roles, and the assigned licenses to Jack as well. So Jack's only got 2 applications assigned to him. We can go into applications from here as well. Actually, let's have a look at which each of these are. So let's start off with group members. Group members are the same as security groups you have in on-premise Active Directory. You can create the 2 types of groups in Azure Active Directory, which are security groups and Office 365 groups. So if I go into groups here, we can see if I go to add membership here, I'm in the wrong place. Let me go back to my org users groups here, and then we can create the new group from here. So new group, and then the group type can be a security group, or it can be a Microsoft Office 365 group. And then you can manage things by groups. So rather than me assigning licenses to, let's say, Jack my user, I can do it for hundreds of users who belong to the same group in one go. So that's what groups are used for. And just to mention what Microsoft 365 groups are, these groups allow members access to shared mailboxes, calendars, files, SharePoint site and other things. This option lets you give people outside of your organization access to the group, and it's available for both users and admins. Going back to the user Jack, go back to Active Directory, users, and go to Jack Brown, and then on the right hand side here it was applications next, so we can click on the link here or we can go to applications here. So in applications, with applications, we can see Jack's assigned Cisco AnyConnect and Salesforce as well. So these are what's assigned to Jack. But if we go to my org here, we can see where enterprise applications are managed from. We can go into here, we can see Cisco AnyConnect and Salesforce here. If we go into one of these, we can see that we can manage the application within here, such as assigning users and groups and things like that. Set up single sign-on, provision user accounts, conditional access, and self-service. And you can assign applications to users. So these are applications in your organization that are set up to use your Azure Active Directory tenant as their identity provider. When an application is registered in an Azure Active Directory tenant, users who have been assigned to it can access that application. and many types of applications can be registered in Azure AD. So you can control user access to applications this way. Again, let's go back to Jack, my user, and the next one was assigned roles. And we have already had a look at this. So you can assign roles so they have the necessary permissions to be able to do things. So that's what that is. And then finally, assigned licenses. You can assign licenses to users or groups, and this is required by many of the Microsoft Azure Active Directory services, such as all users who have the conditional access policy applied to them. They require a premium P1 license, or if you want to use, let's say, Enterprise Mobility and Security, EMS, which is a mobile management and security platform, you will need a license for that too. So licenses can be applied to users. I've got no licenses assigned, so that's why it shows as 0. But to create an actual user, if we go back here and we go to users, we can create a user from here, new user. So you can create a new user, or you can invite an external user as well. An external user can be pretty much anyone with an email address, which you would like them to collaborate with your organization. Let's click on create new user. So we would select the template, create user from here, or we can invite a user. And then we've got our identity information. For example, username of Bob. And then the name, Bob Smith, and we can auto generate a password, or let me create the password I want, and that's it. We can create. At the bottom here you've also got groups and roles, so you can assign it a group and you can assign it a role right from the start. And you've got some other settings as well in here and some job information you can apply to our new user Bob. Let's just click on create here. So it's as simple as that to create a user called Bob. And if it doesn't appear straight away, it sometimes takes a couple of minutes to appear. Now the good thing is, if you wanted to create lots of users, you can do bulk creation, which is here. So you can bulk create users. You can do this via different methods as well. So this one is a portal, and you can use CSV. You can download the template and then populate the CSV file. Or you can do it using other methods such as PowerShell, scripting, REST API and things like that. Going back to the PowerPoint presentation, I missed a slide. So this is the global administrator role. When you sign up for an Azure subscription, you're assigned with the global administrator role. So it's just showing this person is the global admin and she can make changes using all the privileges to users here. And we can see my account down here, which shows that I am the global administrator. And this slide is just showing we can use the on-premises Active Directory domain services to sync with the Azure AD tenant using the AD Connect agent. And just to cover off how users are defined, which is in 3 ways, which are using cloud identities. These are users such as admins and regular users within Azure Active Directory only. And then there's the directory synchronized identities. These are users on your on-premise Active Directory environment who have been synced using the Azure AD Connect agent. And then we've got the guest users here as well. And these are users that live outside of the Azure Active Directory environment. These would be user Microsoft accounts and accounts from other cloud providers. Let's have a look at administrative units and some other features on the Azure portal. So if we go to Azure Active Directory again, I can search for it. So I've already done a search for it, so it's appeared here in my recent services. If I click on Azure Active Directory, we've covered off users and groups. Another one is external identities, which I showed on the PowerPoint slide. And again, this can be set up from here for customers and partners, so external users can access your resources. Roles and administrators, we've had a look at that. So based on role-based access control. Now administrative units, I'm going to be doing a dedicated video on it, but just to go over it briefly. In an Azure AD tenant, there are users and groups and other types of objects, but these are all in a flat hierarchy. So it's all flat. You can create administrative units and assign roles to them. And because Azure AD has a flat structure where all the users, groups and devices are placed on the same hierarchical level, which means the whole AD tenant, administrative units are required to give more granular administrative control in the Azure Active Directory environment. And this is by delegating administrative rights with limited scope. So basically, without administrative units, let's say a password admin would manage the whole entire tenants You cannot specify who the password admin manages. So if you give someone the role of password admin, they would be able to reset passwords for all the users. So how do you control this to a limited scope? How do you make the sales manager of the sales team the password admin so he can reset passwords for his sales team? This is where you need an administrative unit. So administrative unit, you put in all the users that are part of that administrative unit, and then you give a role to the sales manager, let's say the password reset role, so he can only reset passwords for all the users within that administrative unit, not for every single account within your Active Directory tenant. So that's how you give responsibilities to users for their departments or their regions or whatever, their locations, etc. And here it is where you create administrative units from. You can add it. Because I've got a free version of AD, I cannot do much with it, but you can create administrative units from here, and you can assign roles as well from here. You just fill it in as usual, test and next to assign roles, etc. But let's go back to Azure Active Directory and have a look at some of these features. So we've covered off enterprise applications, and then you can also specify some devices, register some devices in here. So over here you can even manage devices, which manages them and secures them. And you can see things like stale devices, non-compliant devices, unmanaged devices, total number of devices, preview feature. Got Intune here. Use Intune to manage devices and protect your organization with device policies. You've got this Azure AD conditional access as well. Conditional access policies to apply access controls to devices. So this is to provide users with support for bring your own devices or mobile device scenarios. With this, a user can access organization resources using their own personal device. These devices can be completely different operating systems, so they can be Windows 10 devices or newer, iOS devices or Android devices, or Mac OS devices. Now that's pretty much it for a high level overview of Azure Active Directory, because I'm going to do some future videos on specific features on all these different services that integrate with Azure Active Directory. But the remaining features down here is app registration, identity governance, which gives you capabilities to ensure the right people have the right access to the right resources. Got an application proxy here, licenses, AD Connect again. You can have custom domain names. Here's mobile device management to manage mobile devices, password reset, ability to reset passwords, user setting properties, and more security down here as well. And then you've got monitoring utilities down here, and then troubleshooting and support.